Sisters and brothers, welcome to Afrikan Genius, the Pan-African podcast, promoting Pan-African culture, thought, and art. I am your co-host, UncleASAR ALKEBULAN.
Greetings, everybody. This is Wesley Pepper. I'm your co-host. And yeah, much love. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. All our new and returning listeners, thanks to everybody. Just before I get to our guest, remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the channel. This is our 7th episode I'm doing with us, ALKEBULAN. You know, it's the Afrikan Genius series, and we've got great episodes. The first one comes to mind is Dr. Max Haida. I thought that was brilliant. And Francine Walker, the last episode, it was all beautiful, and we talk about African stories and we celebrate like Asar says. But today we have a very interesting guest today. All the way, he's actually in Norway today. So before I introduce Dr. Baba Buntu, I prompted everybody to come on board. And Dr. Baba Buntu, before we get into everything, how are you? It should be
very well. Greetings to the co-host and greetings to the global African family. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for making time, my brother. It's always an honor. And I just want to, like I told you off here, I'm gonna be kind of direct and so forth. But let me get into it, man. Dr. Baba Buntu, you probably one of the better public speakers I've had the privilege of seeing and actually hearing. I think you were an outstanding public speaker. I first wanted to start off with it's just something I've always known, and I like even your videos and so forth and so forth. But like I wanna use that to get to somewhere to get to where we're going to, because in this age we're living in today, I've noticed that how we communicate, and I'm talking about the Pan-Afrikanist family here, has changed and has evolved. You know, we mostly everyone still speaks in English, like Asar and myself, we communicate in English. But so I'm not really talking about the English language, I'm just talking how we communicate. We live in a very fast-paced lifestyle, and in the post-COVID world, at least I've noticed that there's communication has just become more and more important. Nobody knows how to communicate. Or rather, my understanding is that you understand the dynamics of that. So before we get into that section there, tell me, is public speaking or just speaking, is it something that you actually trained? Is it something that came natural? Is it something that you trained or worked on, or how did it start? And it's something that you are conscious of course.
Right. First of all, thank you for the compliment. I didn't expect that. and I think, it's not that I rate myself very low as a speaker. I think I have something to offer on the stage, but I don't really see myself primarily as a speaker. And like I said, it's not because I don't think I have anything to say, because I think I do, but it's not something that, okay, let me phrase it rather in the positive than the negative. What I've learned and I'm not a trained speaker, I think I'm an inspired speaker, and I'll tell you a funny story. Many years ago, probably 35 years ago or something, or maybe 30 years ago, when I was admiring speakers, and I was listening to Louis Farrakhan on video, I was listening to Malcolm X on video, and I was like, whoa, this man can speak. And that's how, so I guess in my head, I felt that I was already there. And I remember I was invited to say something somewhere. I don't remember the topic. I don't remember, but in my mind, I built up to a crescendo, which in my mind, everybody's just going to rise from their chairs and just scream. And I finished my life I don't remember exactly the sentence, but maybe I said, and that's why we all need to come together as one. And I was thinking, now everybody's going to scream. Nobody said nothing. And I was thinking, what's happening? So it's just a funny story to say that I think I admired the art of speaking and to elevate the voice or the rest of people. But I think I want to say this, my greatest teachers have probably been the speakers I don't hope I sound like, or that I don't hope that I emulate. because I think there's also a number of speakers that I don't like. I'm not going to necessarily mention any names, but for reasons like I feel some speakers come across as full of themselves, some come across as arrogant, some come across as if they're trying to teach you small people how you should be, and you really feel like you can see that, yeah, it's true what they're saying, but I don't feel good. I'm sitting listening to you, but I don't feel good. And I think what I try to really push myself to become is a speaker that can connect with your spirit and your human experience. I think that's what has always motivated me. Whether I'm very good at it, well, according to Wesley Pepper, I'm doing something useful, but at least it's my aspiration to always connect with people.
No, much love. No, much love to that. Much love to that. Yeah, but like I said, I want to start off with that because honestly, I feel that as a visual artist myself, we use visuals to communicate, of course, but like communicating with people is an art form on its own that I've over the years really paid attention to, and I'm very conscious of it. It's why podcasting and so forth, because I'm trying to operate in the digital space. So with that, so with that said, just for the listeners, Baba Buntu is based in Johannesburg, and has worked in the South African, I guess, in South Africa. Let me just leave it like as that. So he's and understand, especially Johannesburg. I found that like you say, with certain public speakers that sort of speak down on you, I see that social media has become a space where there's a lot of this and that through I've noticed that especially in the art space, of course, it's Ahmed, I want to get into detail, but I'm thinking we'd rather not do that. But basically, my point is that I think that that is definitely a tool that we need to work more on. We're not very kind to each other. We're not very respectful. It's usually if you send a text, it's never greetings, hello, how you doing. It's straight to the point. Yeah, you can understand this and that, but like honestly, I feel there's a bit of humanity taking out of that. Can you comment on that?
I like what you say about the human elements being extracted or taken away from speaking and communicating with people. And I think that's what I also referred to when I said that I hope that through my engagements, I reach the human spirit in the room, and especially us as African people, because we are a people who have for such a long time been marginalized, unseen, disrespected, taken out of the center. So I hope that what I do is contributing to centering us as African people. And I want to remember my younger self that was very insecure, felt outside of everything. And I want to speak to that experience in the room. And when I say normalize, I don't mean that it's just okay that people are that way, but to normalize that experience, because I think what some speakers do, they actually create a distance between you as a listener and them as a speaker. When I listen to people, and I remember this many years ago as well, we listened to entrepreneurs who say, I was born in a shack. We were 200 siblings. We had nothing to eat. It's so miserable. But now I own 25 businesses. I have a private jet. And you're like, I can't even relate to you anymore. Like, you are just far gone. I don't even know what I'm supposed to take from you. So I think that human element, that respect, and don't get, and I think I'm scared of this myself. I always tell myself I must not become one of those speakers or engage or practitioners that is so full of myself that I think I got it. I think I know everything. People must just listen. Every opportunity I have, I'm there, I'm talking, I'm answering. No, sometimes I must be quiet and say, maybe there's someone else in the room who would like to answer the last question. Maybe I'm not Mr. Know-it-all. And I think the danger is that some people, because it's good to have attention, it's good to have likes, it's good to have an audience, but I'm scared. I want to detect. I hope I never get to the stage where the attention I get just feels so good that I'm just thinking I own it and it just belongs to me and I can just abuse it. So I think that's a skill that I would love for us as practitioners. I think that's the title I would like to prefer more than speaker. Because I think when I speak, you should speak to a practice, not just a theory or some concepts that can motivate, but actually a practice that I've lived, that I'm engaging with, and I can share from that.
Asar, you have something to say?
Yeah, I wanted to touch on Wesley gave you that compliment about being a public speaker. I just wanted to say, obviously he hasn't heard me speak, so yeah. But that's great, man. All of what you said resonated with me. You know, again, I am a public speaker. I was in the past, especially with youth groups, youth development, Black male youth development. And one of the things that I did was, and you talking about connecting with your audience as African peoples, I utilize spoken word, poetry. I utilize call and response, chants, music to connect, make that connection. And then you mentioned that, the speaker has to make that connection and not distance themselves as if, I'm the authority on whatever. And I think it's very important when we are working with our people and conveying messages that we use terms, and this is in the spirit of Ubuntu. I always speak in the spirit in the sense of our and we, even if it's negative. I'm pointing out a negative behavior, a pathology or something that we are exhibiting. I still say we or our. And I think that's very important. What do you think?
No, I actually agree that we need to see ourselves as part of the collective. And I think this stardom, I think, let me not talk negatively about social media. We are on a platform right now that helps us to communicate with sisters and brothers. Yeah. So I'm not saying that it's bad, but I think sometimes these platforms can also invite a certain ego, inflated ego reality, because it feels good to have a listenership. It feels good to have people to follow. It feels good to, and I think when you get too consumed with that, you also can forget that you're actually there to serve. You are not there because of popularity. At least that's what I think you should. I think every artist, every African practitioner, including speakers, must be aware that we have a continent and an incredible people to serve, to inspire, to remind, to engage in the learning journey. And I think when you see your role in that way, you also become more attuned to what is necessary. Because maybe some of the things you're saying is not really necessary. I mean, within the Pan-African space, sometimes we lament a lot about our problems. And sometimes that's very useful because we want to analyze why we're in this difficult position. But sometimes it's too much. You feel drained after a conversation about Pan-African issues and white supremacy, and you just feel like, there's nothing we can do. So also bring into your consciousness this opportunity that I get to speak, and I take this very seriously. Even if I speak on the same subject for the 50th time, and I've spoken about it for 20 years, I spend 2 hours preparing myself always. That's why I was on Wesley's case saying, what are the questions? And he said, no, it's organic. Yeah, but what are the questions? He said, no, it's organic. Okay, fine. Let's do organic. But I like to come prepared, not to be rehearsed and to become packaged. But I'm thinking if somebody's going to spend some time listening to me, I better do the work and make it worthwhile for them.
You mentioned Malcolm X. I'm sorry. You mentioned Malcolm X earlier, and you talked about social media. I remember, at that time it was television that was the media. Yes. And one of the things, although I even again you talk about negativity in Pan-Africanism, I hate to even cover this. Dishonorably discharged from the Nation of Islam, but the thing that he was accused of by, and it was untrue, accused of by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, was that he had been seduced by the media, the television camera, or being the spokesman. When they put him up to be the spokesman, but that's not the point. But yeah, I get what you're saying. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, man. I'm just glad you both touched on that on 2 points there, and actually that leads me to the next point I want to make, and that is we are using these platforms. These platforms are the future. Social media platform that is going to evolve, and they are actually and also evolving. Augmented reality is a thing, and we'll probably be using that platform probably in the next few months. These things moving at a pace. And I find that because as Pan-Africanists, as artists, as academics, we are engaging in this space, and you raise a very good point there about it can be exhausting. I know exactly what you do. Just me personally, I don't like to argue with especially if I don't know you online. I would never, I don't even entertain. I just leave it. I find it exhausting, but I think that is a relevant thing because we're existing in this world. Life is moving, and if we can exist in this world and we can't even do something like talk to each other or use the right language, it's an issue because we will alienate. So that's actually something that I think in the future we can workshop or just spend more time and just getting to know, because I've also noticed the whole thing, like as you say, we've got jets and cars and stuff, and this and that, this way of barking at people, and these things are what do they call clickbait. That's the future. That's how we are operating. So what we're interested in is how the Pan-Africanists exist in this space. My brother, another major point I want to raise in existing in this space before I get to AI and I guess eventually mental health. We spoke about communication, but to organize, I mean, you've been involved in organizing and talking to Black men for decades. And I would understand that you have a real good understanding where his mind is and all of this. To be a family man or just a guy or just a taxpayer is already stressful. Now you still have to exist in this digital world. I know this is a bit of a long shot, man, and I'm not asking you to give all the answers, but what tools, according to Dr. Baba Buntu, does the Pan-African male, as the creative male, need to have to exist in these two worlds? Let me just call it that, just for the sake of this question.
Right. No, thank you for the question, and I'm not sure if there is a short answer to that, so you will just stop me when I go too far. But I think what I want to begin with is the essence of consciousness, and which I see as an elevated understanding and ability to not just be wise to pump your wiseness on other people, but for your own empowerment, be able to see better, to be better able to analyze why you are in the predicament and the situation you are. And I think that needs to be done both on a personal level, but also on a collective level. What has happened to us as African people, I think it starts there. What has happened to us as then the African families that we have been raised by? And why is it that many African men have certain challenges when it comes to forming and being sustainable men within the space of family? Why has it come to that? And why have we for a long time decided that we're not going to open up about it, not talk about it? But when we actually finally do, we realize that there's so many of us who have a very similar experience and how we relate to the world and ourselves. So I think that consciousness and that self-reflection is very, very important. I do counseling with families, but also a good number of men and young men as well. And I think one of the tools that I always advise men to use is to write, to journal, to get comfortable with your story. And especially if you feel, but I'm not really a writer, I don't like to write. But then write about that. Why don't you like to write? Is it that you feel your grammar is wrong? Is it that it reminds you of all the things that you are unable to do? Is it that you don't really, because I think some of us, maybe not only as men, but I think it's a particular thing that we struggle with as African men, that we have this sense that let me not talk about my problems, because if I do, I'll just be swallowed by them and I'll fall apart. But in a way, not understanding that the less I talk about this, the less I give it a language, the less I'm becoming aware of what it is, the more impossible it is for me to actually do something about it. So it's like you are allowing yourself to not find the solution. So I think that's a very important thing to connect with yourself. And then I've been very blessed to be able to, over the last 15 years, open up spaces for dialogues between African men in different countries. And I know that this is true, but I'm existing in a world that doesn't know this. African men are ready to talk. And I know this from experience. They are ready, they are willing, they see the point, but they need to be guided. Many need to be guided there, and a space need to be opened up that is validated and that they can feel this is actually safe. I'm enjoying being here and I want to talk. Because most men would look at an invitation to say, come, let's talk as men, let's open up. Say, I'm not coming to that. I'm not coming to that. And if I'm coming, I'm just going to listen. I'm not going to say anything. But then as you listen to one man open up and his next man open up, you see now the human connection. Your question on online and live or face-to-face platforms for healing work, because I love the human connection. I need to be able to see, what does your face say? What is the aura? What is the energy between us? Why are you looking at me suspiciously? Because maybe I said it wrongly. Maybe I was confronting you when you actually wanted to lean back. Those things I can't pick up on the screen. And I think that's something that I do work online, but I really prefer to work when we are together face to face.
No point taken there. Like I said, like, this is a new platform. We exist in war. In fact, I think I read something, we probably spend more time online than we actually do, as with paying attention and so forth online than you're doing in the real world. And many other pockets of society are organizing themselves in that regard. And I think it's high time, we should pay attention to that. ASAR, do you have anything to follow up on that?
Yeah, I want to touch on that whole excuse me, counseling piece. Like you, Baba Buntu, and I was researching you, like say questions or whatever. I didn't prepare the questions, but Wesley gave me information I wanted to research you, and I found that we had a lot in common, especially with working with youth and counseling. I was a counselor, was still a counselor. I'm an academic advisor, which is a lot like counseling. But for the large part of my career, I was a counselor, a youth counselor. And recently, within the past year, I went through some things at work. And I reached out to, they provide counseling. They call it employment assistance program. And in that therapy, I found out that I was traumatized, not only by what was going on, but then I began to realize that we as Black people, and we talk about it, but we don't really, I guess, sit in it for a second. We are traumatized people. And I'm not saying that to be negative. I'm saying, if you have there's an African proverb, we call it an African proverb. If you hide your sickness, you can't get help for it. So that is to say, we don't acknowledge that we have been traumatized. And as men, we can't get well. We can't evolve. We can't prosper and those things. So I think, the whole piece you mentioned about counseling, and willing and able and ready to do that, I think that is very important. And I think that we as men, if we begin to do that, we will begin to empower our communities, and then we can grow as a people. But I think it's very important that we recognize that we have been traumatized. And incidentally, I've been in a new position for a year, and I was coming into that position from that traumatization, from that trauma. It affected my work.
Right.
But if I had not accepted it and then began to address it, where I wouldn't have about the counseling piece, how that
much,
is
but to know that many of us as African men, we feel a certain way about going to counseling, because it's, and many of us think that, no, I'll consider it maybe if everything falls apart. But the expectation to myself and from my environment is that as a man, I should figure it out. I should keep it moving. I should be able to handle myself. And if I don't, then that is the problem, that I can't handle myself. I'm lost in myself. I've failed. And I think we need to, I think we need to do two things, because I definitely believe that there's a good number of us that need and can benefit from counseling as a session with a person who's guiding you on a path to dig deeper into yourself, understand the trauma, understand the problems, and start to unpack so that you can look for the solutions and walk towards them slowly. I find that many men have an expectation to counseling the way they go for to repair their car. So, you know, when the car repair has taken more than a week or two, you now start to think this is not a good car repair. They are taking advantage of me. This is nonsense. I want my money back. And then people are also saying, you know, if they've gone to two sessions, 3 sessions, 4 sessions, like, why am I not changing? Why is this not improving? And then they will say, counseling doesn't work for me. Counseling is something that you need to commit to for a long time, at least for most of us. And I'm not saying that it cannot be useful to do a few sessions. That can be useful for some. But especially if the deeper the trauma, the longer you also need to commit to it. And I would like to put in, because I'm very much about us regaining our cultural literacy, meaning African culture for many of us, and I'm talking on the continent now as well, sits very strongly as something we need to go back to. How do we go forward with culture? Because it's supposed to be tools that can take us into the future and reinvent ourselves, not just something we need to do. You know, the common answer is, why are you doing this? No, it's just what we do. You see, in my nation, in my language group, this is what we do. Yeah, but why? Well, my grandfather always told me we must do. But that's not a reason for a cultural tool. And me, it empowers me, it gives solutions. And if culture, in our experience, fails to do that, then it has also lost its purpose. So I find, for instance, those who, what I sometimes do, I bring several men into, well, you could call it a group counseling, but it's really a dialogue between African men. And I find that a lot of men get so much back from that because they see themselves in other men. Certain things are being expressed through another man. And others were struggling back to the night, telling stories, validating ourselves. So I want us to also to really start using our cultural.
Yeah.
Everybody, we are back. My video is just off because the bandwidth is a bit jumpy, so just please be, it'll happen, but it'll be on and off for the rest of the recording. But anyway, just to recap on what we're talking about just before this break, was the whole thing of mental health and men. You say that it's a process, and I totally, I fully agree. We just spoke. I just told briefly offline. You know, there was a tragedy that happened to me now recently. You know, a friend of mine took his life, it's just something that I've noticed in this post-pandemic world that is becoming a bit more scary. I mean, even last was this other guy, Ricky Rick, you know, popular African musician, you know, he took his life as well. And there was a few others. Actually, it's been growing. So this you're talking about mental health. And I just want to tie it in just to make a point on the previous point we're making about social media being so overwhelming and so stressful. I'd like to think that, especially with the younger generation, it's definitely I would say it's a major role player. Baba Buntu, when in counseling men, have you think do you this is a bit morbid, it's a bit of a morbid question, and I didn't really plan to ask this, but do you think there is a bit more of an uptake in men having mental issues now than, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years ago? And if so, do you perhaps know what the potential problem could be?
You know, I think I want to re-present something that UncleASAR said about realizing that we live with traumas. And I think when you say that, maybe the younger generation, we know that with Black men, African men around the planet, there is an increased number of people attempting to or thinking about and also committing suicide. And I don't think, because sometimes suicide has been framed as an act of cowardice, like you are a coward if you just butt out of life, you don't have stamina, you don't have strength. I don't think it's that. First of all, it's very different from person to person, so we can't just blanketly say that this is what it is. But I think for me, it's a symbolic there's a symbolic message to us as African humanity that a good number of men are saying, I don't think there's a space for me in this world. I'm too ashamed of what I've done or what I haven't been able to do. I'm a failure, and I don't think I'm deserving of anybody's love or respect, and I'm not validated. So I think, you know what, I'm going to draw the line here. I think I should ship out. And that's not necessarily an act of being a coward. That's an act of that. I feel that collectively we have a responsibility, because we also need to take responsibility as a community that have not affirmed many men and women too. I'm not leaving women out, but since we talk about men, we have allowed a lot of men to live with self-doubts, self-hatred for a very long time. Since the time when boys are young, we have families and communities that allow young men to doubt themselves, feel lost in this world, not sure who's supposed to father them, who's supposed to mother them, who's supposed to protect them and guide them. And that's something we have done as a community. So now when a number of men are saying, you know what, I think I'm gonna leave this planet, it's also a response to the generational, let me call it failure, because it's something that I want us to take responsibility for. Yes, there's a historical context to this. This is not about us just from our birth being incapable to parent or to father or to protect. It's something that has come into our trauma. This is an experience of trauma. But I want us to take responsibility for the solution. And that means we need to read the signs. We need to take the symbolic message that many men are. And I find it's quite a staggering number of men who have thought about suicide and maybe thinking about it as one option at one point. And I want us to stop just looking at it as an individual experience, because I think to some extent, many of us have thought about what is the Black life really worth, especially and it's not even about, I was going to say, especially if we don't have a huge income and huge material assets. But like you mentioned, Rick is an example of somebody who was rich and had the life that many men aspire to. And he couldn't stand his life. For some reason, we wouldn't know because he's not here to share with us. But it's not even about what you have and what kind of profile you have. There's an emptiness that has become part of the masculine Black experience that we as a community have a responsibility to change. And we need to start doing that now. We cannot afford anyone else to not want to live.
I wanted to talk about that process, and I'm going to talk about depression and suicide. Again, you use that metaphor of going to a mechanic, and what's the problem? What's the solution? Right? But it's not that easy, because we throughout the diaspora and on the continent have been traumatized or experiencing trauma for at least 500 years. So how is it that 2 or 3 counseling sessions is going to fix that? It's not. Right. I think my job provides 6 counseling sessions. I went beyond that. I think I went twice that many. And then I said a year later, I'm still experiencing trauma from at least that situation. Right. So it's going to take a while. And I think we have to be courageous enough to say, hey, I'm not Superman. Well, listen, I'm not Black Panther. I'm not Black Panther. I don't, you know, I don't have Black Panther. All to do. And one of the things I used to teach my young men in group is that you're not alone, and you have your brothers here to help you. And you talk about just like dialogue we have it right now. This is healing for me. So you're not alone, and you don't have to become, because these are adolescents, you don't have to become a man overnight. Just do a little better every day. So that's what I'm asking for our people. You know, this thing has been going on 500 years. It's not going to be better tomorrow. We just have to do a little better every day. And it is a struggle. It is a struggle. I find myself fighting against. You talk about tradition. In living in Nigeria and Lagos for a while, I noticed that did this and his father did this. My perspective is, tradition is supposed to sustain the people, or at least propel people forward, or sustain it. When it does that no more, it's of no use. John Henry Clark talked about an orange. He was talking about the nonviolence movement. He said an orange, once you use all of the juice out of it, you throw it away. It's not good anymore. So if we're doing traditions, and there are certain things that are going on the African continent, and here too as well. But I'm speaking of those cultural traditions. You know,
Yes.
some of them are they're just doing it to be. We're doing them to just do them. They're not sustaining us. As a matter of fact, they're taking us backwards. And we need to, again, it's a process. Sit down and look at these things. Sit in them and say, well, what is the benefit of this? Is it benefiting me, or is it not? I remember I wrote a piece, and Wesley may have read it. I don't know. He might not have been a fan of mine. But I was writing for consciousness. And in the piece, I talked about the white man. He counts and measures everything, right? And then he looks at it and says, how does this benefit me? The African doesn't do that. We don't do that.
Right.
If it's shiny and popping, then we want to be a part of that.
Right.
So, Leopold Senghor, the former president of Senegal, he talked about how the African becomes assimilated. He doesn't assimilate. He becomes assimilated. He loses all of himself in the other. We need to figure out, why is that happening?
Yeah.
That part of that is trauma, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, just to build on what you are saying there, which is profound, and I agree. I feel that right now we have a window that was not open 20 years ago, with our youth, because youth, not everyone, but to a much larger degree on the continent and in the diaspora, they're asking the right questions. They're asking, why am I expected to follow this religion? What is the purpose? Those questions, many of us were raised in ways we didn't even ask the question. We just tagged along because that's what it was. Now young people are asking the questions. Are we answering them? Are we allowing them to find new answers? Because if we don't, and this is my fear, that this window that is now open with a more critical outlook on the world, where young people also want to understand their traditions. Many say, I don't have a problem to do it, but I want to understand what it means. And I think that's an incredible position to have. And it's so important. But are we providing the answers? Are we guiding young people to find the answers? That's what I really want us to take some responsibility for doing. We recognize the gap, we recognize the trauma, at least we are beginning to. But it's something we can actually start resolving. And many have started, but many more also need to join that process.
Let me the window. Bring me back to the window, because I'm sure I'm going to forget. Greer and Cobb, Doctors Greer and Cobb, 1968 Black Rage, and they talked about the more the African is assimilated or socialized into white society, the more apt we are to commit suicide. Now that's heavy, because it's something you said about who we are. We start to again accept those what am I trying to say? The standards of the dominant society, the oppressive society, and when we don't meet those standards, you mentioned it earlier, we don't meet those standards, we become depressed because we failed. And that's right. I don't want to get going to the window. Depression. I don't want to get too clinical, but suicide is actually a sign of improvement, right? I'll tell you why. Because in depression, you don't want to do anything. And when you commit suicide, you're actually making a statement is, I want to take my life back, right? Unfortunately, that's a small window. You talked about the window. If we don't have the support, then we'll go that suicide route. But if we're depressed and we're actually coming out of it, I want to take my life back, and we have that support and that family and that extended network to help guide us in a certain direction, then we can survive. But if we don't have that support, again, we've taken on the values of the dominant society, the oppressive society. And once that window opens and I stand up and I say, I want to take my life back, I won't take my life. Does that
Right.
make sense, brother?
Absolutely, absolutely. I love what you are saying, and I think you are touching on the uncomfortability with this, because we're not supposed to say it the way you said it, but it's so important to reflect on it that way. There's a symbolic value and message in doing that. And I think what we also need to say is that if life is going to continue the way it is now, if Black existence is going to continue to be like this for the next 500 years, what's the point? I'm saying it provocatively, and I'm not advising that people should now end their lives, but I'm saying, is this really how we want to live? Are we okay with this? Is this what we want to bring children into experience? I hope not. So it's also a reminder of, I like to look at it like this, especially those of us who think we have something to offer to our communities. We're going to see more of members of our race deciding not to be with us because Black life is horrible. What are we doing to change that? What are we doing about injustice? What existence that we were so brainwashed to copy, emulate, and try to fit into? Let's also remember, and I'm saying this in the context of South Africa, that often it's very uncomfortable to talk about race and whiteness. We need to remember that the structure of whiteness, the purpose of whiteness is to dominate, but appear as if it's not. Appear that it's just human, it's just about everybody, it's just about whoever rises to the top. And we buy it every time. So we also become very confused about what is it? Maybe it's me not fitting into work. Maybe it's me who's just subservient to the boss. Maybe it's just me having fears and issues of insecurity. But actually, I need to remind myself on an almost daily basis, I'm part of a system that has banked on me failing, banked on me disappearing, banked on me not really wanting to be here. So like you said, it's systematic. And that's what we need to rise up to, and not just sit and talk about, because it's great that we can have the analysis. But since I now know this, what will be my way forward, and how can we collectively motivate each other to stand up, fight, and aspire to the life that I think we all really, really deserve as African people?
That's right, brother. That's right. Wesley?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have anything else to add. I just love the analysis, and I agree with what you're saying, Baba Buntu, about acting. I'm just really also, and I'm glad, and much love to both of your viewpoints. I think, this is beautiful, and I hope people can listen, and just take in what you guys said, because like I made the point earlier on, is that we are in this digital space, and the space is corrupting minds, and rerouting brains, and I think these, yeah, I just think these conversations are really, really important, and moving forward, because we all we want to see Black people grow. We want to, we want to move forward, and that's basically, I just much love to all to both of your perspectives. It's really appreciated. Also,
brother,
just
tell us some of the things that, I'm sorry, Wes. Brother, tell us some of the things that you're doing.
All right. No, thank you. I think a short introduction is, so we have a company that we started in 2002, an organization called Ebukhosini Solutions. Ebukhosini meaning place of or house of royalty. And it's a place where it's open to all African people, but specifically those who know that they are searching for something, but it hasn't really manifested a deeper political understanding. Is it to understand more what Black ways of looking at life, what it means? So we invite people on various and a variety of learning journeys. So my wife ran a program for women. I run a program for Shabak for men. We have programs for young entrepreneurs, for children. We just finished the African Winter School, which is a week with all our beautiful information and education. So at the center of what we do is really to re-empower the African family. We want young.
Sorry about that. There was just another cut in the broadcast there, but it is recording, and if you, yeah, the recording definitely picked up what you said. Hey gentlemen, the line is getting a bit dodgy, but the recording was recording. So that last bit that you said should have been. I just didn't hear it on my side because the app had to restart. Asar, do you still have anything else to add?
Is it recording? All right. Okay.
Continue, bro.
Hello?
March.
Where?
In Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, Wesley. Can you hear us?
That's what I mean.
We are suspecting now that the white man is pulling his tricks again.
Yeah, it's just
so we're going to start a campaign.
That's why I think as Black people we should own our own. We should own our own networks.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true.
Own our own networks and manage this because I've got no control over it, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, I greetings everybody. Yeah, as you can tell that the recording was stopped. The network just got really pretty bad, and we couldn't continue. And there was a lot of back and forth, and we just had to end it. So yeah, this is just a sort of an outro. And much love to UncleASAR ALKEBULAN for coming through again. My brother, it's always good to chat to you, and Dr Baba Buntu as well, all the way from Norway. I hope he comes back to South Africa pretty soon, or finishes his project pretty soon. I hope all goes well. As you can tell, it looks a bit light on my side. That's because I've done the editing only the following day. And yeah, I just realized I had to say something. It ended just a bit too abruptly. But yeah, remember, if you're watching this, please, if you ended up watching this till the end of this, please like, subscribe, and comment to this channel. You'll find it on YouTube under the Lexcia podcast. Yeah, and catch you guys all next week. One love.